And we are back on Capitol Tonight. So as you've heard, education was a significant focus of Cuomo's State of the State address, from the $2 billion Smart Schools Bond Act to a call for universal pre-K statewide, though no details on how that might be funded. The legislature has a lot to consider this session. Joining us from the Capitol to discuss the governor's speech is Senator John Flanagan. He's the chair of the Senate Education Committee. Senator, nice to see you.
Liz, thank you.
It is good to see you, and thank you for joining us. You know, this is a wide-ranging speech and a broad brush speech, as everyone keeps reminding me, though the education portion was of particular note. The Bond Act came a little bit out of left field. What was your first reaction?
Yeah, I would agree. It did kind of come out of left field, but I think it's a very positive thing for two reasons in particular. Number one, I like the notion of a bond act because ultimately it's decided by the voters. We can put it out there, and if the public supports it, great. And I think they'll embrace something like this as long as it's done fairly, equitably, properly distributed, you know, like on a regional basis. But it's got a lot of romance. I mean, you have tremendous amount of changes in technology. So to me, the devil is in the details like anything else. But in a macro sense, it's a very positive thing, and it recognizes, you know, the state of where we are in education. And frankly, I think one of the strongest points of the governor's presentation today was during his PowerPoint when he highlighted how some schools have great laptops and some schools' best technology is a metal detector.
Yeah,
so there's a great disparity.
Yeah, that's a line that a lot of people are commenting on. You are certainly not the first. It did hit home with people. I just am curious, though. I mean, I think a member of your conference supports an environmental bond act. If I'm not mistaken, it would be Senator Grisanti, I believe. I mean, do you think? And the governor made no mention of environmental issues almost at all. Do you think that this is going to be a difficult sell? I mean, education is sort of like apple pie and mom. I mean, people really like it, both sides of the aisle. But borrowing is always a little tricky.
Again, I would just say that the most important component of this is it actually goes to the voters.
Yeah.
The governor outlined some very good points in his proposal. And again, how it gets distributed is going to be extremely important, because you have acute situations in some of our rural communities. They don't even have bandwidth access now. So, you know, if you tell them you're going to give them money for laptops and they don't have what they need already, that's going to be a problem. So how it's distributed, where, and, you know, at what level, but $2 billion is real money.
Yeah, it is, certainly. The pre-kindergarten aspect, I mean, again, the governor is in a little bit of a tussle or a power struggle, if you will, with the New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, who wants to tax the rich to fund universal pre-K. The governor says it's very important. He did not mention anything about funding. Does the Senate Republican Conference have a position? Do you personally have a position?
Well, we have to conference this, and obviously you have differences of opinion between the mayor and the governor, but personally, I'm much more in line with the governor's approach. The fact that he has embraced this idea and advanced it is extremely important. And if he believes that we can pay for it within existing resources, look at one of the overarching themes of his speech today was tax relief, property tax relief, corporate tax relief, looking at our level of spending. So I don't see why we can't take an aggressive look at how to do it without raising taxes on the rich. And the mayor, frankly, he laid it out and kind of said, I still want the tax money anyway.
Yeah.
So if we can do it within existing resources, that's something the public will find a much better appetite for than increases in taxes.
Is there not a worry, though, that if you have existing resources today, that you might not have existing resources next year or the year after? I mean, the question of whether or not you can commit to a recurring revenue stream to children over the long haul is a significant one.
We spend over $21 billion, and if you include STAR money, it's over $24 billion on education already. Last year we put $1 billion in new money in. My expectation is that we'll probably be close to that number this year. So yeah, I mean, I think you can make a fair argument that any year, whether it's health or environment or transportation, that you're always going to have a concern about the availability of resources. But if you advance some of the things the governor talked about, in upstate New York, you do the manufacturing tax cut, you do things that promote economic development, that in and of itself should be a very strong component to generate revenue that'll help properly fund education. So I think about that all the time, but that shouldn't dissuade us from moving forward. And you know, Liz, one of the things that people don't really follow well enough, we spent about $385 million on pre-K already.
Yeah.
And one of the problems for the city of New York has been that they don't have adequate space There have been years where they've turned back as much as $20 million. So, you know, we have programs in place already. This is a move towards full-day pre-K, not half-day.
Yep.
But like every other part of the budget, again, the phrase is the devil is in the details.
You have an education reform blueprint that you released not too terribly long ago. You did hearings around the state, if I'm not mistaken. We've
Yes.
heard a lot of criticism from parents, from the teachers union about the Common Core. No mention of the Common Core from the governor in the State of the State. Were you disappointed by that?
I'd like to think that there'll be some stuff that comes out in the budget, but yeah, sometimes the speech is notable for what it doesn't say as of what it says.
Indeed.
There was no discussion of regional high schools. There was no discussion of Common Core, no discussion of privacy, pre-K through 2 testing, the excessive amount of testing. And one component, and I recognize this is not the budget, but there wasn't anything said about the reduction or elimination of the GEA. And for our colleagues, the people I talk to, from school districts, that's the single most important component. They'll like the Bond Act, but they also want to know that their GAA is being reduced.
Right.
I'm hopeful that the governor will include a lot of those details and those things in his budget message. But I have to tell you, from what I hear and the people I interact with, they will embrace some of these things, but they are very, very concerned about Common Core and its implementation. There's still strong support for it, but the implementation is by far and away the most significant challenge right now.
GEA being gap elimination aid, that's the
yes,
catchphrase
I'm sorry,
for
gap
that,
elimination adjustment. Yes, that is, if you look at what school districts are clamoring for, that's the single most important part of the funding stream
Yep.
that they want to see reduced or eliminated. And we've advanced that in the Senate for the last couple of years. I've been very outspoken with and on behalf of my colleagues on that subject. And if we're going to promote financing in any one particular area, to me that is by far and away the most important part.
Yeah, the Common Core implementation, you know, it seems that there is a growing desire, and I have seen the comments by the Assembly Speaker, for perhaps slowing down the implementation. I think that some folks are saying that the NICET call for a 3-year moratorium is perhaps unrealistic, but do you see a legislative solution and potential common ground between the Senate and the Assembly?
We started the hearings in the fall, and we made everyone well aware. We had 5 hearings, issued a report, and frankly we did it the right way. We went out, we listened, we put everything together and put out kind of a blueprint. I think there are good opportunities to do things, and I made it clear then, and I'll make it clear again now. We expect that the state education department and the regions are going to make changes, and they should be setting educational policy here in the state of New York. But if they don't, the Senate, the Assembly, and I'm sure the executive are going to weigh in, and I don't suggest that that is always the most prudent course, but if we don't feel that action is being taken in the best interest of children, I don't think any of my colleagues, Democrat or Republican, Assembly or Senate, are shy, and especially when it comes to education, considering it's our #1 priority and should be our #1 priority. You already have very intense opinions on these subjects, so there's a brief window, and if they don't seize the opportunity, I do believe there will be legislative action.
Do you, and as regards to the rest of the speech, I mean, the focus of our conversation here is education, but it seemed to me that there was a lot for the Senate Republicans to like, particularly when it came to the $2.2 billion tax cut package, although there are a number of social issues, again, that are back on the table that the conference, I think, would have a problem with. Is that a correct assessment?
I think that's a generally fair assessment, but let me be clear. You know, like on the women's equality agenda, we passed 9 out of the 10 points. We did it last year. My expectation is we would do the same thing this year. As it relates to the tax programs and the economic development things the governor advanced, the stuff at the airports, great. I don't know who couldn't embrace that. The corporate tax rate, the manufacturers. I would like to see more of that someplace on Long Island because nothing was mentioned about that. But
right.
For upstate, for Buffalo, for economic development, and focusing on understanding when the governor puts out a graph that shows spending over the last 60 years was up an average of 7.1% and personal income growth was up 6.1%, that's compelling. You know, at some point you can't spend more money than you have. So I don't necessarily agree with everything, but in broad strokes there is a lot of good stuff for people to embrace. And he is focusing pretty much with a laser-like fashion on economic development. That should be easy for anyone, Assembly, Senate, Democrat, Republican, to embrace and support.
Well, Senator, we will let you go. I thank you very much for your time. Again, it's going to be an interesting year, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Liz, I'm sure we'll be talking. Thank you.
We do have to take another quick break, but straight ahead, we will continue our State of the State reaction coverage. Please do stay with us.